Tillman. And Genie graduated from high school in 1960 here in Lake Placid High School. And her family moved here around 1952, to the best of her recollection. Kay Wells Whitehouse, Kay and I are near the same age, and we went up to school together. She graduated in 1972. And her family dates back, I think around the mid-1930s, if I'm not mistaken, yes. So there's a lot of roots here, a lot of memories, a lot of great things that we're going to hear from our special guest tonight. So at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Genie, if you'd like to get us started, Genie.
Okay. My memories begin in 1952. We came here, I was in the 4th grade. We lived in a 2-story rental house where Lori Slade's insurance is now around the circle. And the biggest thing that one of the things that I remember is that we walked from the circle to the college where it's at now, uptown in the lake, and we had no fear. And we walked through we didn't have concrete sidewalks, we had dirt paths, and all the trees were all scrubs, all growed up along where Lake Placid Drug used to be, Robert Dunny's office was, all those buildings up there were all scrubs. We just had the double street here. This part of town was all that there was that was all businesses and all. But we walked to school, and like I said, had no fear of the way the kids are taught today. And I can remember crossing the railroad tracks, and there was a big tin building consolidated on that. They were one of the biggest orange people in the county, I guess. And that's where all the paychecks come from. They would line up in the mornings, the men would. There'd be a line of single men, a line of married men, and then a line of married men with families. And the superintendent would pick however many they needed that day to go to the groves to work. He would pick all the married men with kids, families. He'd pick all those, and if he needed a few more, he'd go to the married line. And from that, around that big tin barn building, whatever it was little wooden houses which stretched as far back as Main Street, America, the restaurant. All that whole block was filled in with, I think there was even one big apartment house that they mentioned. And the men worked in there. They could, rented there, lived there. There was also a 2-story apartment building where Miller Air Conditioning is now, and that was rented out to the workers. And then from that, Kay, do you have anything to add to that part, or?
I just remember the old consolidated shop there.
Shop. And then from then on, in 4th grade, I remember we walked to school. I had a school teacher, Mrs. O'Connor, but I bet there's nobody. Did you have her? We came from Sebring, so I was a little bit advanced with my reading, and she would let me tutor some of the slower readers in the class while she did other work with the other children, and she was the absolute best teacher. But we moved, after that, we moved to Loretta, across Citation to Loretta. And, but one thing I want to mention, there was a 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Newsom. Her granddaughter is sitting right back there, and she happens to be my daughter-in-law now. So anyway, we left, we went to Loretta, we came back in 55, I believe. And from there, it was high school all along. So I can remember from 52 to, say, 60, I think was the best time. The town was small. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was concerned about everybody. They cared about everybody. And I think that was probably one of the biggest growths those 8 years. because we, later on, past 1960, then, you had, well, another thing, let me drop back to 52. Placid Lakes, my dad was a tractor driver. He dissed all of the beginning of the Placid Lakes for August Tober singing. And he was, he dissed all that up. I can remember going out there with Mama, and we tiled palmetto roots for them to burn, to clear all that. And that was the beginning of Placid Lakes with August Tober. Also, later on in the 50s, Leisure Lake sprung up with a Mr. Miller that was a developer. Then you had Sunning Lakes down there that Jack Weiser came and was building, and Sutter and John Ward was building. And of course you had Gene Whitaker at Leisure, Sylvan Shores building there. He and his brother came to town, and they had, their dad was in Sebring, and they had a big construction company up there for that time frame. It was big. They came here and they started, Gene and Jerry Whitaker. They made a lot of paychecks for people in the community, because like I said, it was just a little working class community. Not very, there were some people that were financially secure, and there were some business people. But the majority of the people were just regular working class that looked out for each other. You went to the grocery store, you had a long conversation with somebody. And you can't do that now. You rarely see anybody in a restaurant or a grocery store that you even know. So anyway, when these building subdivisions began, then that's when the town started changing, because you had houses and all. And some of the houses, I remember Daddy worked for Gene Whitaker on the dredge on the north end of Lake Clay, where all those fine homes are now. When Roger and I were in the 11th grade, we had a junior class party out at the north end of, wait till they get in. We had a junior class party in 1959 out at the north end of Lake Clay. There was no houses, it was all bay trees, and all of that Gene shoved out, pushed down, cleared, and dredged dirt out of the sand, out of the lake, that end of the lake, to build up all of that in the north end of Lake Clay for all those homes that are all back in there to the north and the northeast. I remember that. And that all of these subdivisions that started around were the influx of people then to come to the homes and find our little jewel, gem, whatever you, paradise, whatever you want to call it. It's developed in those 40 years to be that way. And we don't know anyone who go to the grocery store or go to the restaurant or anything like that. I don't think. I see very few people that I recognize.
And I think it's really nice, as you point out, each one of those subdivisions and the person that was behind each one of those, and when they developed, and since you mentioned the names of Mr. Miller and Mr. Weiser, I do know those myself. Thank you for sharing.
When you talk about
I'm sorry?
when you talk about taking the class out there,
Yeah.
picnicking and whatever, a lot of people look around and say, well, how did you do all that? Well, there's only 28 people in our graduating
Yes,
class.
Roger Thomas
Yeah,
done
it's
it,
very easy.
and I graduated together. We're both with us, and we've become friends again, close friends. And he shares a lot of the school memories that I have, and I had forgotten about that. It's hard to believe that all those houses used to be bay trees, and they dredged all that sand out of the lake just to move on, progress. I guess it's good. It's good, but it's hard to take. You know, there are good memories of how it used to
Good
be.
and bad and
But we
everything.
also, how much time do you want me to
Oh,
spend?
no, do you remember when they were paving the Highway 27, or was
Yes,
that not?
yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was like in 65, that
Yeah.
they were 4-lane.
4-lane,
Four
and
lanes,
then,
yeah.
Okay, I can go before 27.
Fort was actually there.
But
it
I'm
was
going,
Main Street
I'm going to
here.
Sebring, before 27 was built.
Yeah.
We lived at Max's Ranch, which was Sunny Lakes now, which is Sunny Lakes now. Okay, the house we lived in was right in the right of way for 27. So we moved again to Florida, back to Florida. We're always home base back because that's where my family is from. But we had to move. They tore that concrete block house down. They built 27. It was just 2 lanes. Built 27 up because we used to have to go 17 up through Sebring and Avonport. I believe it's 17.
It is,
Yeah.
And can you remember that as well? Some of the
I remember 27.
Yeah, and then later on, they put 27. But we had to move, get out of the house, so they could tear it down. And it was right where Summer Lakes is now.
And I believe that when 27 was being built, if I'm not mistaken, there was an interruption during the war. I may be wrong about that, it seems like I knew that. But they had to put the construction on hold for a while. I'm not sure, but anyway, that would have been late. I know that it was built by like late 40s because my grandfather had a dealership out there on the corner. So that would have been late 40s.
But I don't, well,
Swing Valley.
27 wasn't here in the late 40s, I don't believe, because they had, like I said, maybe it was.
Real late, like 48 or 49.
They had to tear the house down at Maxie's Ranch in Sebring, where Summer Lakes is, to build
That was
just 2
17
lanes.
to travel.
But the 2 lane,
Yeah.
when we were in school in 59, I can remember issues was 2 lane.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember I had help working with Whitaker Brothers, we tore down buildings on 27 out there. Stalled his grocery store and the liquor store and all that.
Yeah, Hunter's grocery store.
And then moved them back.
To do the 4 lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, well, I knew Whitaker's was, I knew they were in business in the 50s. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Hearing that from my parents.
And the Endicott family.
Yes, the Hancock family, they did a lot of plaster and
Building
cement.
and stuff.
And they're the ones that developed the swirl.
Yeah, the dovetail they call it.
Dovetail, okay.
They built the Lake Placid Gym,
Yeah.
Who, Endicott?
Endicott.
He could walk on those
It was built-
stilts better than he could walk on his 2 feet.
It was built before I remember today because I was gone from
The
52 to
Endicotts.
55.
The Endicott built it and used Mr. Whitaker's trucks and loaded the trucks by hand with shovels.
Oh, Gene and his brother Jared loaded and unloaded, train carriers of rock up there for their daddy
Right,
in Sebring, after they
on
went
the
to
airport
school.
road there.
And they unloaded those big, long, freight train
Freight
things,
cars.
cars with a shovel. That was their job after they got out of school. So,
Do you have anything specific that you miss about the past? I know you mentioned just being able to go into the grocery store.
I miss the closeness that used to be here. There's still a little bit of a closeness with the caladium growers, the small group. I didn't even get into that, but Joe and I started farming caladiums in '69. And he was, Darlene can correct me, because I know she's on point back there. I believe Joe was the first one that had a 4-row digger or planter under a tractor and developed the arm that comes out and goes up and loads caladiums down into a trailer. He was also kind of the first with a counter. When they used to be, when they became popular, I guess you'd say, there was, if you had 2 eyes, electric eyes, lights, and you broke it, it would count. He had a counter like that, and then he decided one was too slow, so he put 4 lights across there. And then shortly after that, someone came up with the idea of ordering counters from Holland. Well, we ordered a counter, I believe Darlene and Dad, I think y'all had 1 or 2. 3. Donald, 3, okay. Donald Bates had bought one at the same time. And what we found out was Holland's electric was different from our electric. We had to get somebody in to changed the electricity over in the electrical part of the county to get it to work. And we spent from 69 till about 88, 89, maybe 90. And farming Palladiums and tuberoses, and then we also were doubling up with gators. They became popular, or not popular, but they became in '82 you could farm gators, and so that was showed love right there. He went into farming gators, and I've still got gators. I don't have Joe anymore, but I still got gators.
He was well known for that, wasn't he?
He was well known for that, yes, and his innovations that he built for us. He built all of our equipment. He built our planter, our digger, our everything we had, and had just a high school watch tower.
I learned to weld out there building that stuff.
Did you? You did a good job, because some of it's just been junk. Well, it's there. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Kay?
Well, I can't answer that, but I can just start talking about my family a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, actually, like I said, my mom, I think, came here in 1935. She was about 7 years old. She was born in 28, and she was that been around 35. We didn't really talk about it that much, you know. Now I look back and go, man, why didn't I record a lot of this stuff? You know, this history's gone, and I'm sure a lot of y'all can say the same thing. But back in 1938, that's when Uncle Tilt came from Holmes County. Now, there's a bunch in this room that probably know people from Holmes County, because Lake Placid is full of Holmes County people. I see Debbie nodding her head. The Williams family, the Ellis family, the Moore family, the Worley family, the Taylor family. They're just
Birds
all of them up in Holmes County. And I was talking to Lonnie, the Bush family, all of them. I was talking to Lonnie. He said, well, one reason his dad came in 1938 was they were still trying to recover from the Depression up there in Holmes County, and they were about to starve to death. So Uncle Tilt found out that there was money to be made in Lake Placid by picking fruit. And so they came down and started picking fruit. Not too long after that, my dad was right behind Uncle Tilt. So he came, I'm not really sure what year, but I'd say by 1940 he was probably here.
All of them told that money was growing on the trees.
Money growing on the
They didn't
trees.
tell them they had to pick it.
Right. But Daddy used to tell everybody, you get this sand in your shoes and you just can't, you can't get it out. You
This
can't
is
get it out.
God's country.
You're gonna stay, this is God's country down here.
Hey, who's your dad? I'm trying to remember his name.
My dad was Hilton Wells. He went by Dad. And my mom was married to Uncle Joe, her brother. So they got married. His sister, huh? Uncle Joe and Mama
We're not married.
They were not married.
He was Uncle Joe was married to her.
Yeah, is that what you
Better use that fan.
But I can remember a lot of stuff growing up here in Lake Placid. I remember the old hotel there on Main Street, or Interlake Boulevard there, corner Main Street. I remember that, the old hotel. And we tore that down in the 80s, the early 80s. That was torn. Yeah, that was torn down.
It
And
had a grocery store in the
there
bottom
was
of
a
it.
grocery store at the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah. And I remember I got a doll for Christmas there one time. It was one of them tall dolls, those walking dolls, and it come from right there at that little store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a High man, his name was High, Cecil High.
Cecil.
He had a little snack place in there right on the very corner of the hotel. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was still there when I was in
I was
school.
young, we were young.
Yeah, but that was my first job. I was 13, and I was a soda jerk, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, I was too, like Placid Drug.
Yeah, well, this was at Cecil High.
There was a bunch of us. So,
Everybody was like Placid Drug, that was the place to work. Yeah.
Everybody's working at Lake Placid Drug. My mama cooked for about 20-something years there.
And,
Best hamburgers around.
yeah.
Yes, it was. That's what everybody tells us.
Yeah.
We never told her then, but maybe she hears us. She knew it.
But Daddy worked Consolidated, and I remember when I was young, one of my favorite things to do was go to the old pump house there, or the shop there, right behind Lewis's truck stop. You know, the roads go like this, and that was like riding a roller coaster. Now they've straightened out a lot of those hills, but I know when I was little, man, you would get butterflies in your stomach, and it was like, go faster. And that was like going to the fair. I mean, it was better than any fair ride. It was riding down that road with the hills.
I busted the oil pan on that road going so fast.
Yeah, I mean, it was real hilly. They've straightened out a lot of those
Yeah.
now. It's not anything like it used to be.
No.
But I remember that was a favorite memory. But like Sylvia said, I graduated in '72. But let me back up. My mom and dad, when they got married, then they had my sister Diane, who's here tonight, and then my brother Hilton, and then of course me. But in 1953, my mom and dad got saved in the Church of God in a 16-week revival. Well, after that revival, there was not an Assembly of God church in Lake Placid. So my dad liked the Assembly of God and their beliefs, and y'all know that's a Pentecostal church. And so my dad and some charter members, which were Hardy Driggers, Ross Lee Wells, Junior Strickland,
Bob Triggers.
Bob Driggers. There was, I don't remember all of them, but anyway, they started and started First Assembly of God, and we were over there where Pure Lead is now. There's a little church that's been built around it. That was our church there. And then in 1970, we moved up to Plamosa Avenue. We come to town. We got away from the railroad tracks. We come to town. And so Mom and Dad were charter members of that, and Mama went there until she passed away in 2019. So from 53 to 2019, she was a member there at First Assembly. We're still going strong. So I just thought I'd tell y'all that, because I'm real proud that my mom and dad kept that church going.
Something to do with it, yeah.
And to be honest with you, there was really hard times, and they tell the story, and I'll just brag on them because they had this much faith. But we were poor growing up. We didn't have, of course everybody was poor, I guess. We didn't think anybody had. We were all that way. But I know there was times that they thought, how are we going to pay the bills as church, because we didn't have very many. And Mom and Dad took a mortgage out on our house to keep our church going.
And I'll tell you something else. Your mom and daddy both worked. When they got their paychecks on Friday, they tithed.
Yeah.
And what money was left, they paid their bills. And then what money was left, they bought groceries. Okay? If Dink got home at lunchtime before Lucille did, so she worked at the packing house, he would take a can of tomato soup. He would add water to it, warm it up. He would evenly pour it out into 2 bowls, and that was their lunch every day when money was tight. Because they tithed first, they paid bills second, and what was left was grocery money. And sometimes it was only a can of tomato soup, which you could thin down. So that's the type of people that raised my niece.
Well, I will tell you, Mama would buy vanilla wafers for her Sunday school class every week, and we knew that we could not touch those vanilla wafers. Those were for her Sunday school class, and we were just hoping not many kids would show up.
That's leftovers.
We knew not to touch those cookies, but anyway, God was so good to them, and I was blessed to have wonderful
And they tell
parents.
about our cousins moving in, 2-bedroom house with all of us.
Oh yeah, they come from Bonifay too.
Palatka when
Some
the
of the
mill.
black boys,
Yeah.
they worked at Palatka. But anyway, they came and lived with us. We had like a 2-bedroom house, and there was 5 of us and them 2, all in a little house. Oh, this room's bigger than our whole house was. A lot bigger. So I don't remember all that time. Anyway.
I'm the oldest.
She's older than me. But anyway, I wanted to tell that about the church. And right down the street from Plamosa Avenue, Mama used to tell me, baby, that's where I went to school. I don't know if y'all know that house. It was the old the schoolhouse here in Lake Placid. Well, my mom went to school there. You know which one it is, Dee Dee?
The Paynes lived
The
there.
Paynes,
The Paynes lived there.
yeah, that was the old schoolhouse.
Fleck
Right.
That mama went to that there.
There's the chair right here.
And then, of course, I graduated, like Sylvia said, in 1972, and then I was working for Lake Placid Drug, which, how many in here has worked for Lake Placid Drug? Wonderful, great boss. And so I was working there in 1972, and then when I graduated, Dee Dee and Charlie had went on vacation, and I was working there, and I remember calling them because I got a job at First Bank of Lake Placid. Now, I was moving on up. And from the drugstore to Lake Placid, because I think I started working there at 16 at the drugstore. And so I went to work at First Bank of Lake Placid in 1972. The bank was actually established, it opened up in January of 1960. And we had Tropical Harbor here, and Mama tells me the story that I guess when the bank got robbed and all, then they shut down and went back up to Sebring. And Mom worked for Ridge Lime and Avocado, that's what it was called back then. And she said that on Friday she would have to drive all the way to Sebring to get money for the payroll. But I guess they paid them in cash. Tropical State Bank, yeah. And so she would drive all the way to Sebring. So she was so glad when some of the local people decided to charter and get a bank started. And Dee Dee here, her dad, Doc Cruz, was one of the charter members.
He was the president.
He was the president, right, but he helped start the bank. And then Doc Cruz was the president. And they opened in January of 1960, and I started 12 years later. And I remember when I first started there at the bank, they had just started going on computer, but we would still, people would bring in their little savings passbook, and we'd take our little calculator, and we'd figure out what the interest was, and we'd write it in their book, and then we'd write it over here on a log, so underneath their name. And then we went into, everything started being added. We did the same thing with their loans. If we did it wrong, I don't know if anybody ever called us. They didn't know. Maybe they didn't have a calculator. But anyway, that was in 1972. Around 1983, well, the bank was actually sold out to Mr. Griffin. Gene Griffin bought the controlling interest, and they sold out the bank to Mr. Griffin. So he got it in 1983. And it was probably, Mr. Griffin was already, no wait, excuse me, let me back up. He already had it. Because in I think it was late 73 or early 74, I can't remember, but one day we were back there filing checks, and all of a sudden, somebody was on the phone, and they come through, we saw Mr. Griffin come through the bank, and he walked through the back, and he was just, did y'all know Eugene Griffin? How many knew Eugene Griffin? You never knew him? Nothing could be out of place. If this stool wasn't right in order, he would stop and put it here. We were scared to death of him. And so he come walking through, and he was real quiet. He stopped and talked to some of the girls and went on. Went into the vault there, told Miss Laura Ryder, which is Mike Ryder's mama, said, I need you to go in the vault and get out $80,000, put it in a bag. Well, he had gotten a phone call while he was back in the lounge that someone was holding his wife hostage. And so, Mr. Muscanic, y'all remember Mr. Muscanic? He'd come through telling everybody, get off the phone, hang up. And it's like we were all just, those that were on the phone were hanging up. And Mr. Griffin, he goes on out, and he was told he was being watched. Well, the old hotel was still there. And so we didn't know if someone was up in the second floor watching or what. And so he had Miss Ryder go in, and she got the $80,000. And she come back out. Mr. Griffin was out talking to people like nothing was going on. And so he got in his car, and anyway, went to the house and gave the money to the person that was holding his wife. She was not harmed. But I remember within an hour, probably an hour and a half, we had the FBI and everybody just swarmed our bank. They were all in there, but they found the guy. It was a local guy. And he just got upset with the bank. But everything worked out good. He went and got a haircut, so we recovered all the money. But I remember Mr. Griffin, he went and got a haircut and ate on it. And Mr. Griffin got,
Going towards dementia or something.
I don't know about that, but he was, I know he was upset with the bank.
Yeah.
But, Mr. Griffin got on to Miss Ryder because she was so nervous that she put an extra $500 in there.
She was gonna make sure.
Yeah.
That's why I got his haircut.
Yeah, we couldn't tell that story, we couldn't tell that story for a long time because, you're not supposed to disclose how much money you're giving out. But anyway, that was real exciting that day.
You sure
that
you
was-
have that right, that Mrs. Griffin was only worth $8,000?
Back then, we didn't keep as much, 80,000 was.
Oh, you said 80, I thought you said 8.
No, 80,000. So, yeah, but he was so calm, y'all, you would have never thought anything was wrong. That was just him.
I've heard of him, of course,
So, and then one time I was told that they were told that they were going to be robbed. Now, this was right after I went there, so it had happened prior to that. But they were always checking the windows across the street in the old hotel because they thought somebody was casing out the place. You might even remember something about that. You don't remember that? But yeah, they had gotten a tip that they possibly would be robbed. So that was.
Do you remember when they actually demolished the hotel?
It was in the 80s, mid-80s.
Do you remember actually viewing it?
Oh,
observing
yeah,
it? I mean,
yeah.
because
I watched them tear it down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that building there that used to be Mid-Florida,
The little,
Yeah.
Shamrock.
where Shamrock is now,
Yeah.
there's a wall right there back. That wall belongs to Cruise Corporation now.
Oh, yeah.
There's a wall there that's not part of that building. That wall belongs to the bank. It's not part of that building.
The one with the,
cafe part of the museum.
Yeah.
I mean,
But the
there's a
Shamrock
hotel.
is where the cafe part was.
Right.
Because Mama leased it one summer and didn't do good. I can remember several people that came to Lake Placid during that time because I waited tables and they ate there, the working men did. I can also remember Jerry Whitaker and his 2 young daughters coming in, having breakfast Saturday, Sunday, sitting there at the counter with Bonnie and Anita was little girl. So, good memories.
Good memories.
Yeah.
And another good memory to me, is, like she said, growing up, now we wouldn't dare let our kids do it, but we just run all over the neighborhood.
Well, that's what I meant
we
by
would-
walking from
we-
the circle
yeah,
to
we-
college.
Grandma Tillman, she lived over there on Plymouth Avenue, and we would walk over here. Y'all remember the ballpark in the circle there?
Yeah.
We played ball there. That was, we would just,
Skating rink.
yeah. Oh, my, Lord, when that skate rink come along.
That was the most fun.
Let me tell you, it was here, I turned 16 on July 22nd that year, and I borrowed Mom and Dad's car, and I pulled that Chevrolet Impala right up to that. That skate rink.
They pulled up right.
Yeah,
open
right to
down
it.
there, and then they.
Everybody at Lake Placid learned to skate.
Almost
So
over
and
anymore.
I was pregnant with that in the back there. So I couldn't skate.
Bob Griffin didn't learn real good, he broke his leg.
Huh?
Bob Griffin didn't learn real
Oh,
good, he
yeah,
broke
Bob
his
Griffin
leg.
broke his leg. Yeah.
At the skate rink.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, we couldn't wait for that skate ring to come to town. The floor, and they even had the organ. Remember they played the organ?
It was
Yeah.
tent top and
Uh-huh.
Mickey was the guy that owned it.
Yeah.
It was Mickey, it was Mickey, and
Yeah.
that was, I can't remember when that was discontinued, but I think it was probably in the 70s, it was. still
Yeah,
there.
because I got my license around 70, yeah.
Well, actually, I was gonna ask you about a memorable experience, but actually the hostage situation, that would be memorable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, another memorable one is when our town burnt down.
Yes.
Yes.
That was on a Friday night, and I remember we
I
had,
think it was February the 15th, for whatever reason.
It was.
That sticks in my mind.
It was the next day after.
February the
It
15th?
was, on a Friday, I believe.
it was on a Friday, because I was
Friday
watching
afternoon.
it. Yeah. And I remember, how many remember Greeny Eyed? Had the liquor store?
Yeah.
Well, when I first started working at the bank, we would be open until 7 o'clock at night. And so they would close at 4, and then they would close at 1, and then they would open back at 4 to 7. Because I remember when I worked at the drugstore, Terry Blackburn and Laura Ryder would come to the drugstore in the afternoons from the bank, and they would get egg and olive sandwiches and a chocolate soda.
Or cherry.
Yeah, now get a chocolate soda is what they would get. And that was on just about every Friday afternoon, we could look for them to come in the drugstore. I remember
That
that.
egg and olive, very popular.
Yeah, it was good.
Lots of pepper on it.
Uh-huh,
Yeah. And I think we all worked at the drugstore.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for teaching us. I did. When did your mom start working at the drugstore? Do you know? Oh, Johnny?
In the 60s.
She was there when I was in school, I don't know. I knew to go there a lot.
Goodness, I don't know, Dee Dee. I don't know.
She retired in
I can't remember how many years she was there with you, but I know you were very gracious and gave her a diamond necklace when she retired.
I have that.
And that back yonder has got that diamond necklace on. I don't know.
I know she retired in it was 78.
78?
I know she was there all through the 60s, because that's
Do
when
you
I,
know Cheryl, when she retired?
Oh, I have no, I just remember going eating there when I was like 12.
That's the important thing.
Well, she was there when I worked there.
I couldn't tell you how long she worked there.
I was working there when I graduated in 72, I was working at the
Yeah, she's still
drugstore.
working there.
Yeah.
Darlene and I probably worked there when we were in high school.
yeah,
We
it was
graduated
in
in
the 60s when
65.
we were working there and she was
Yeah.
there. Mama was working with her, my mother was working with her.
And
there.
remember Miss Maddie Collier, she
Yeah,
was there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Betty Hancock.
Yeah.
Faith Miller.
Yeah.
Faith Miller was there.
Yeah. I remember when I was working the soda fountain one time and the Episcopal priest was sitting in front of me with his collar and his suit, and he wanted a chocolate soda and I pushed it the wrong direction and he had chocolate. And I just knew I was in trouble. Luckily he was very gracious and happy about it.
That sounded intentional.
It was not. I thought I was gonna die.
When Alita was working, she was at the grill.
Always.
And when I was working in St. Regis on 70, I would come to the Lake Placid drugstore every day for lunch. And all I did was, I would stop there, Alita would see me. She said, baby, what you want? And I'd tell her what I wanted. She said, okay, go find your place to sit. And I'd go and I'd sit down with somebody that's already there. And I would have my meal before they, and says, how did you get your meal already? We ordered ours a while ago and you just walked in. I says, I have it in with the cook.
And Mrs. Cruz made the best coconut cream pies I've ever
Yes.
eaten in my entire life.
You know, she gave me that recipe.
Well, let's share. No, just make me one.
The coconut
Just make the cake and call us.
I've got that somewhere at the house.
Now, you better have it, because I gave it to you. I made a copy of it and gave you the original because it was in her handwriting.
Well, I remember Miss Maddie Collier,
Yes.
she was which is Kelly and Deborah's grandma. She was my bus driver, and we lived over there just past Lake Serena at the time, and I would be the last one to get on the bus in the morning, and I would also be the last one to get off in the afternoon, and we'd go all the way out there past Hope's farm and all around, so it'd be probably close to 4:30 before I'd get home, and I'd go to sleep. So Miss Maddie Orr, she'd have to stop the bus and go wake me up and get me off the bus, and she would always, she called me her little sleeping beauty. And I remember that about her, but I also remember she didn't put up with that. You were gonna be good on her bus, or she just soon pull that bus and stop and give her a switch.
No, she didn't have a switch. She had a fan belt. A fan belt.
I don't remember
She
fan
asked,
belt.
Clay Creighton and Vance are here tonight, but you can ask them. Did she have a fan belt?
Yes, she had everything.
And then her route changed, and then Gene Jones took part of that route. And Matty Orr had a different route at that point. They changed the route, because I rode with Matty Orr when I first moved here, and then Gene Jones was my
I
last
think
ride.
Miss Jones took, I don't know Miss Matty Orr, but she must have taken
Right.
the reins as how to discipline your bus driver.
Yeah.
I love Miss
Students on
Mary,
the
I
bus.
got along fine with her.
Sweetheart.
The boys did too, after she straightened them out.
Well, once she knew how far you can push her, you don't push.
And she worked at the drugstore.
And she worked at the drugstore too a long time.
Many years.
And she got a diamond necklace too for
Oh, did
retiring
she?
from the Lake Placid.
I know Lucille, her mom got one whenever she retired from the drugstore too, didn't she?
I don't know.
I think she did.
I know I quit the drugstore, went to the bank, and
Well,
I
if
didn't
you
get no
were-
diamond.
You hear me? I said, if you quit, you didn't get a diamond necklace, because I didn't get it either. I wrapped a mini Christmas present up there at the Whitman's candy boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and now you can buy them, they're already wrapped. But used to, we had to wrap them Christmas time.
You know, we've talked about a lot of old timers, in your opinion, Jeannie and Kay. Who do you think stands out as a really historical figure in Lake
But
Placid?
don't pick my husband.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to say, because I love them dearly, but I would say the Stidham family.
What that?
Yeah.
That would
Your
be
family.
one. You and your
Most
parents.
influential here, and they've done so much for our community
Oh,
that no one ever knows about.
I would say the Bowers family
Well,
too.
that was, well, I would say Gene Whitaker, because
Yeah,
he
and
fed a lot
definitely the
of
Whitakers.
people.
Yeah.
I had a lot of employees. But her husband saved us a lot of money on going to the doctor with these babies that
Yes.
had runny noses. We could go in there and Charlie would, under the table, get some
He fixed that dog with her. He
Yeah.
would fix a concoction up, and he didn't have to go to the doctor.
Dr. Crankshaw.
Tell my Tommy King.
Dr. Crankshaw.
He was very, very.
Daddy was the same way.
Yeah, Doc Cruz, so he
Doc
was,
was, yeah.
It started with Doc Cruz, so Charlie had a good mentor
Yeah.
through Doc Cruz because he was so good. But I remember when Tommy Kay was little, she was sick one time and I was gonna take her to the doctor and she said, "No, Mama, just go see Dr. Charlie. He'll fix it. Just take me to Dr. Charlie." And that's what we did, but he was wonderful.
And you
I
could,
remember when Mother and Daddy moved from Washingtonia over to this street, and I again remember the name of it. And for several months, she wouldn't have a telephone. So people wouldn't call to get Daddy to go down and get something. But one Sunday afternoon, somebody knocked at the door, a young woman, and wondered if Daddy would go down and fill the birth control pills. My mother said, "No, you behave yourself and you can get them tomorrow." That was my mother.
One thing I would like to recognize, my family, my immediate family. I mean, Kay's here, Diane's here, Lisa's cousin from Ward 2, she came over, Lisa Waldron, Lee. And then I'd like for my kids and grandkids and maybe a great-great-grand, I've got 5 kids, 14 grandkids. Let me get here, but I'd like for them to all stand up if they, 5 kids, 15 grands.
they're already standing.
And then we have a Kay's cousin. And then I've got cousins back there that are Lil Rita related, and I'm proud that they came to hear.
Well, I know they're proud of you, Jeannie. I know they are. You have
I'm very proud of
You have a great legacy.
They've all raised their families here, they've expanded out with the grands, some of the grands have businesses here, they're all right here in this little place that our little paradise.
You have much to be proud of.
I
That's
do.
for sure.
I'm very proud
Very
of it.
blessed.
Well, I didn't tell any of my family.
Family, baby.
I didn't tell anybody, my sister.
As Jeannie was saying earlier, that this community, this town stuck together back in the day. They still stick together.
Yes, they do.
And I'm gonna give an example of why I would say that. This Insight auction out here on 66. His name is Shane, I don't know his last name. But he's very into this community. My granddaughter needed a liver transplant 3.5 months ago. He held an auction and gave $16,000 to my daughter for my granddaughter. And the rest of this community around here, the ball teams, different people have donated money to her, up to around $25,000. This town still looks out for each other.
That's
Yes,
good,
it
yeah,
is.
we do. And thank you very much for saying that, David.
Hey, thank Grandbaby for the important.
I know that. Yes, I got a bunch in the back. They're late, they were late.
Even in the last 7 or 8 years, Chris Caulfield had to have a liver transplant. We had a fundraiser for him. Caulfield.
Oh, yeah.
A kidney transplant.
Yeah.
Who was the other boy? Played baseball. And we had another fundraiser. The community really comes together.
Yes,
They
they do.
really come
They do.
together.
And I gotta go beyond that, Darlene. My husband was sick for about 20-something years with heart. He finally got a heart transplant. But what I'm getting at is the prayers that this community can shout. Lake Placid can shout when they need to. And he was prayed for 20-something years. And we got 13 more years after the heart transplant. So I agree with David. There's still community love here.
We
Just got to
had
let the people know what the problem is.
We had donations as far away as the Bahamas.
The Bahamas, that's awesome.
Well, one other thing I wanted to mention was where the IGA store used to be, Potter's. The Potter owned the building, but my father-in-law from Sebring, Tommy Whitehouse, they had the IGA store, and actually Bubba worked for my father-in-law. He's the one who owned that store.
Bubba Styler. You need to tell everybody who you're talking about.
Bubba Styler, excuse me, Bubba. And then he gave it up when Bubba moved over to the other store and built that. But before that, it was always Tommy's IGA. A lot of people just thought it was Bubba's, but it wasn't. It was
What was it? Whose grocery store was it in the co-op?
Tommy Whitehouse.
That was Tommy had it there, yeah,
My
okay.
father.
The
Right.
Potter family, it was in the Potter family, the building was in the Potter
Potter
family
all those years.
until I believe they negotiated something with the First Bank of Lake Placid before Mrs. Potter passed away. And they actually purchased it.
Yes, First Name
Yeah.
purchased that. I remember that.
And the little house in the back that's connected there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
she lived.
Wasn't that the Moretz?
No,
No.
Moretz was across the street right there on
Where
the
Martin
Where the
Payne
barber
is
shop
now, the
is.
shoe doctor,
Yeah.
or foot doctor.
Talking about the apartment houses, I remember those apartment houses there by Moretz and where Main Street America is, and that lot there, that was an apartment house, and they were built up on blocks.
Yeah.
And it was like a house here, and then they had those open hallways, and then another section, and an open hallway, and another section. And I remember we would pull up there on Sunday mornings, and Mom and Dad would blow the horn, and about 7 kids would come running out, and they'd pile up in the back of our car, and we'd go to Sunday school. But I remember them, that apartment house.
Do you know why the house is up on blocks and the walkways were separating the apartments? They weren't air conditioned.
No,
And
they
they
weren't.
kept, that's where it was cool.
They were called all around.
I I know, we used to play at the
Are you
house.
talking about the apartment house that was behind the,
Mama Retz's old building.
Right in there where Robin has her store now, in Main Street America, all
Where
of
the
that.
laundromat used to be on
Yeah.
this side.
they were, but wasn't that, didn't Consolidated have a little shop?
They
There-
did
Right there
right behind
the
it,
track.
behind it.
Okay,
Halfway lumberyard. was
Yeah.
over there.
but the other apartment houses, there was
Across the road where-
a row of apartment houses, because Mrs. Newsom lived right across the street from it in the house there,
Yeah.
because we lived there. You didn't, but,
I didn't.
well, I did.
You're older than me.
She likes saying that.
I'm the baby.
What about the Smith house on the circle down there? The
Oh,
old-
yeah, that was like an apartment place too.
I know when my father came down here, before any of us did, because he decided he wasn't gonna die out there in the snow, so he came down here to get a job. He worked for Jerry and Jean Whitaker, but he lived in that old Smith house apartments for a while.
The apartment house on the circle.
On the circle right there, yeah.
And the fire department, when Danny and them were in the fire department, they burn it,
They burn it
they had
down.
practice burn there.
O'Neill house, but it was not related
Yeah,
to
O'Neill.
to us O'Neill.
Smith,
There's some pictures up there somewhere.
Smith house, and I remember.
Yeah,
Smith
this house is what I
As
remember.
long as I can remember.
And then the old Michicana Motel was down there too.
And then-
Yes, at Michigan Motel, Mama worked with Catherine Williams, which was Carolyn's, is she here? Carolyn Williams, Carolyn, who is she now? Joyner?
Joiner now.
That was her mama, that Mama worked with at Michigan.
I know Daddy lived in Michicana for a little while,
Yeah.
trying to just go from place to place until we could get settled.
So when did y'all come here, Darlene?
I moved down here in 1960.
Okay.
Went to school here, didn't
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I started in the 8th grade,
you? Okay, yeah. you-
graduated in
She was a little
65.
bit behind.
I'm
She was a little behind.
You remember, yeah.
I was in that office so much.
Oh, I know. And then I went off to school for a year and came back and worked in the office, and I had all the bad kids and detention hall. Yeah, I knew all the bad kids by name.
I remember your mama working on them all things on this. She has the same birthday as Jane has, October 23rd.
I worked with your dad.
Yep, I know.
And I remember your daddy too, his little Plymouth car that he had or something. I think Joe bought it.
Yeah. I drove to school. Of course, I wasn't old enough to drive, but Mama didn't drive.
You didn't have to have a license in that day.
Oh, I tell me about it. But the car I drove was an old Plymouth. I don't even know what year it
I
was.
learned to drive the Plymouth.
But the driver's door didn't have a latch. And the front door on the other side wouldn't open. So Mama would ride in the back seat on that side and I'd drive. And I'd have to hold the door, and if I'd go around a curve, back then the Crinlins would be flapping in the breeze. And we'd drive to Buddy Wise's house, and I'd park the car there, and we'd drive it right into town. He'd drop me off at school and take Mama to the drugstore or to Montcallie. She worked one place or the other. And then on Wednesdays, when Buddy didn't go to work, the barber shop was closed, I'd drive all the way up and park across the street from Bowers Garage on that, where CVS is now. It was a vacant lot. And I'd park the car there, and I'd walk to school, Mom would walk on down to the drugstore. And Chief Williams knew, but he never said a word. As long as I didn't cross that highway, he never said a word.
Well, Dee Dee, what year did the drugstore open up on Internet?
1955.
55? Well, then how long was it then before? Because I remember the post office used to be right beside the
Yeah.
drugstore.
Well, yeah.
So,
Well,
when did they open up that post office there?
The first thing on Interlake, as best I recall, is where Ridge Forest is. and
Yes.
It was Mr. Hand's
Hand,
electric shop.
Hand.
And then they moved the post office next door. Then
Right.
Clyde McCauley
Yes.
built his store. And then he was talking to Daddy, he said, you need to do it. And so Daddy built the store, and then Robert Dunny did the law office right next door. So that was the beginning.
Firestone.
Pardon?
Firestone after that.
Yeah.
I remember they
Post
had
office changed
combinations.
into,
Yeah.
They had combinations for the boxes, and I remember ours was ECG.
Yeah.
So I remember that just remember eat
Eat
cold
cold
grits.
grits.
Oh.
So I've always remembered that combination is ECG.
Our post office box was
8:13
2.
or
8:13.
8:13.
And
Now, my
Hands
business is
Electric,
45
is where
minutes.
Ridge Forest is now. Hands Electric, when TVs were
Yeah.
They had the first one.
they had one, and they put it out so that anybody could see it on the showcase. And people on Saturday night would drive up there and park as much as they could to watch that TV through the glass, and it would be more snow than you could watch than actual,
The guy that turned the antennas going on.
movies or anything like that. It was just had
I remember the first TV that I saw was back on Main Street, when the store was on Main Street, and they had apartments upstairs. And Frank Fassett had an apartment right above the drugstore. Well, he built him a bass fiddle type thing. You'd hear him up there at night. But anyhow, he got a TV. So when we closed up one night, he told Daddy, Mother and Daddy and me, come up, I want to shoot. Well, all you saw was snow, but he said, now look, you might can pick out a little figure right here. But that's the first experience of seeing a TV.
But Mr. Ham, he'd leave his out so everybody could see. Yep. You know, through his storefront.
I bought the first TV from my color TV when I worked at Eller Realty.
I
From
see.
Arcadia, Eller had a real estate office, and I walked down to, at one time at lunch, to Mr. Hand's and bought I think it was a Philips brand color TV. I asked him how much he would sell it to me for, and he told me. I said, well, I've got to go to the bank, so no, I didn't go to the bank. I did on loan from him, and I paid him so much money each week for that that TV. And I remember when he delivered it, I told Daddy, I said, there's your first color TV. I bought it on,
Looking at the group. Jeannie,
Ma'am.
Kay, Diane, you all, though y'all didn't work at the store, but your grandmother did. You know, I'm just thinking how many people that really affected Lake Placid drug. And Darlene, you helped out, didn't you? You were your grandmother worked for us.
And Barbara.
Barbara.
Oh, yeah.
Barbara worked there, my mother worked there a long time.
That's right.
Dee Dee, Jane, my daughter, worked there washing dishes.
Oh,
In the kitchen, yes. And she bought her first bicycle from Firestone for $10
They
a
financed
year.
it if I didn't have a bicycle payment that week, we went next door to the college because I spent more money. But if I had to pay my bicycle payment, I went to the left, to the right from that drugstore and went to Firestone. That's when Mr. Lambert.
Yeah. Miles Lambert.
Yeah.
Miles' dad.
Yeah, I was dishes out there.
Yep, and she was an employee too.
One week I was sick or something, so I had to go in and wash dishes.
I didn't get no money though.
Yeah, both washed dishes. Your arm was broke or something.
Yeah, there was a good reason why.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you how Lake Placid's changed though. Years ago, Mama had, I think it's the one that I drove up to the skating ring, that Impala. And Ann Kleiner worked next door to the drugstore for Robert Dunny, and she had the same kind of car, same color. And one day Mama went home for lunch and she drove the car and she thought, well, looking around, and she got back, she parked the car and went on in. Well, then a little bit later on, they found out that she had taken Ann Kleiner's car to the house. And because she parked it in a different place, and
Mama
you just
did
left
the
your
same
keys in the car back then.
Mama
You
did
didn't worry
the
about
same
it.
thing. Mama did the same thing.
Yeah.
We had a black Mercury, and so did, I think his name was Mechanic or something at the bank.
Mike Mechanic.
Mike Mechanic. I think he had it in his pocket, and she actually got in it and thought, no, this ain't right. And she finally figured out and got in hers. But they had the same two kind of black, it was black two-door, four-door Mercury.
I done the same thing, but I didn't drive it off because the keys wasn't in it, that's the only reason I didn't.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same car as ours, and I come out of the store, walked around, opened the door, got in it, and then I got looking, what in the world is, where'd this stuff come from?
Yeah.
And I got looking and I realized I was in the wrong car. I got out of it quicker than I got in. And so
I
I'm
might
like,
mention that his daddy had a shop, he probably can tell you more about it, in the 55 to 60s, along in there. His daddy was a mechanic, had a shop. I want to say it was down there,
Was
right where George's, place was, it's
On the,
TD Bank now, wasn't that where you got
did
it?
you have that shop? I don't, that building was built in the late
yeah,
forties.
no, that's what the same, but this building, John Smoke built the building for him to open the garage up. It was across from the Sinclair station next to,
Yeah, oh, it's down.
John-
That's by
John
that-
Pearson's welding shop.
Yeah.
And then next door
South.
was my dad's shop.
Cause there was a grocery store up there too, Miss
Stall's.
Stall's.
Yes, Stall's Grocery.
Yeah.
I rode a bicycle over there many times with a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when my brother went into the service,
Yeah.
and we took him down there to, Bowers Place there on the corner where TD Bank is. And the Greyhound bus picked Hilton up and took him to Miami. And I think it was like 3 days later, we looked and Hilton had already hitchhiked back home. Because of the weekend, it was the weekend, and Mama's like, son, you know, she's worried to death, but they had to load up and take him back down there.
I saw a lot of soldiers
Yeah.
coming from there when I
Yeah.
was growing up,
Yeah.
because that's where they were. And we had, you remember there was a telephone booth there too?
Yeah.
If somebody got into town, they could make phone calls, and, but yeah, that was all going on when my sister and I were growing up there.
Oh, it
I
was
caught the
terrible.
bus to Miami in service right there at, the old hotel.
And that time was different then, you know, they didn't have cell phones and.
The bus station was right out there at that
Right in
time?
front of the bank, the
Oh,
old hotel.
Yeah, the old
That's
hotel.
where I got on the bus and ran by the Lake Placid
Oh,
in
gosh.
1969.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, any questions? Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to the program?
I'd just like to say to the people that aren't from Lake Placid, Dee Dee's here, the owner, her parents own Lake Placid Drugstore, and that just wasn't a pharmacy. You could buy almost anything in Lake Placid Drugstore. You could buy jewelry, you could buy makeup, you could buy any perfume, and it was also the best place to eat in Lake
They
Placid.
had toys
Had
That's
model-
right.
and
model
books and
planes.
magazines. and-
Right. And her mother would take, it wasn't even a kitchen. It was a small room, and she had a stove on one side. Actually, she had two. She had one on this side, and she had one behind her, and she could just open the door. There was just enough room to open the door for her to get things out of that oven, and sinks back there, and she would cook full meals back there. It was baked ham and sweet potatoes and homemade macaroni and cheese and turkey and dressing and cranberry sauce and greens and lima beans and cornbread and rice and coleslaw. And all of the workers would come to Lake Placid Drug and have either this nice dinner, or they'd have one of Olita's hamburgers.
Or
And, or egg and olive. And she
grilled
also
cheese, too, they
had,
would manage.
she
Don't
also
forget the
had
homemade pies.
nice desserts. The
Homemade
Make
pies.
the pies at home though.
The
Yeah.
thing was,
And the potato
she
salad.
cooked all the food at home.
Did she?
Yeah.
See, I didn't.
Yeah.
She carried it in the pots before she had the kitchen.
Well, it was
Well, now
full
this is
meals.
how far we go back. I remember on a Saturday, we had barbecue, sandwiches, potato salad, and a drink for $1.35.
Well, a small Coke was a nickel.
Yeah, $1.35, and that was a meal. I mean, a thing of potato salad, a nice big barbecue pork sandwich.
Okay, one other thing that nobody's thinking about too, back in the, I don't know what year she started, 60s, I guess. I can't think of her name, but it was Donna Lewis's mother.
Yes.
She started the first garbage truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one.
Really? I didn't know that.
Donna owned that.
Donna's grandmother.
Grandmother.
Yeah. And she was on the, one of the
The show.
game shows
Yeah, the.
on
Oh,
television.
What's My Line or
What's
whatever.
My Line?
And Danny was on the same show
Yeah,
for being a swamp hiking
well,
driver.
yeah. But Danny won it one year, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny won the swamp.
I didn't know that.
But, she didn't have no mechanical lifts and stuff on that truck. She had to manually pick up the garbage.
She drove it and picked
She
it up.
drove it and picked it up, yeah.
That would be Donna's Lewis's grandmother.
Yeah.
Right.
Sylvia,
Yes,
I guess I
Sally.
have a story. I had a nursing job at Lake Placid because I was Charlie Stidham's little sister.
Oh,
The
And
five
so I
star.
worked there for a while. My brother Tom,
His first name was
right.
Frank.
Hang on, we got someone in the back that wants to say something. Look at
Correlated from
my brother Tom went off to college and he had worked at the drugstore also for Mrs. Cruz. And so when he came home from college at the University of Florida, he brought his roommate. And the place to go and see and be seen, if you'd been away, was to go to Lake Placid Drug.
Yeah.
So Tom took Mason to the drugstore, but the night before, when my mother had known they were coming, she baked Tom's favorite cake, which was a coconut divinity icing on a coconut cake. And they called, my dad called it a mossy back cake. And so he took a big slab, or 2 big slabs of mossy back cake with him to the drugstore. Walked in and asked Mrs. Cruz if she would supply him with 2 saucers and some forks. And so he walked in and put those 2 beautiful slices of cake on the saucers and asked for 2 glasses of water, which all of that was no charge. And people were coming in and would walk by and look at it and they'd say, Miss Cruz, I'll have a piece of that. And Mrs. Cruz was somewhat mad at her at the time for bringing in outside food. But it was really funny. So she didn't have a temper, but it was just Tom, doing that kind of thing. But it was really funny because everybody wanted to have a piece of that. Miss Cruz made everything else so wonderful, they figured she made the cake.
Well, let me tell you a funny story about Mother. And she always did the slicing of the ham, the turkey, the beef, whatever it was. That was her thing. But anyhow, the senior boys that were in the high school senior class, had their pictures made, so they all went to school with their white dinner jackets on. So they came to the store for lunch with their white dinner jackets. And Bill Bowen said, Miss Cruz, you going to the wedding? She had this knife in her hand. Wedding, who's getting married? Glenn Prescott. Oh, he's nothing but a baby. He's nothing but a baby. That was my mother, that's it. I think she told Charlie and me that too when I got my engagement ring.
Did she play tennis quite a bit?
Do what?
Your mother, did she play tennis with my grandmother?
Play tennis?
Play tennis together out around Bishop Park? I think there was some tennis courts out there at one time.
Maybe so, I don't know, maybe, anyhow. Yeah.
That's cute.
Good memories, good memories.
Yes, very good memories. Well, I think we can all agree that Lake Placid is very unique. Yes, yes.
I wanted to just say something really quick. So, I've been away from Missouri 28 years ago, from now, and I'm so thankful to you and everything you've done with historical outreach, and it's just really meant a lot to me to see things from way before my time here, or stuff I just don't have a memory left over. And I wanted to thank Genie and Faye for sharing about their family background and heritage stories today. And it's really cool because even though I've been gone for so long, there's people I'm watching throughout the room that you may not realize with the pieces and moments you've touched my life too. When we were talking earlier about Lake Placid being small and still, a system there and coming back together. So you don't even realize the ripple effect. And maybe just one small kind thing or a project you worked on with me or something, but it keeps going and people do remember and we're grateful. And as a piece of this moment, I don't know if I'm totally out of line, but I've never heard about the coconut cream pie until now, that apparently generations back is very important. And it made me start thinking, is it remotely possible to do perhaps like a heritage, Lake Placid recipe cookbook as like a fundraiser for the Historical Society? With special recipes that people are hoarding but might give up for that? Maybe that's possible.
You're hired.
That's excellent, an excellent suggestion. And we'll definitely talk about that.
Sounds tasty.
Yeah, yes, it does. Anybody else, any more questions, or? Okay, well, what I would like to say is, we want a special thank you to Jeannie and Kay, for all the memories that they shared, and, some of the humorous things that we've also heard tonight, and all of you that are here. It means a lot to me. The program, the Legends program, got started about 6 months ago. We weren't sure exactly how it was going to all turn out, but it's been successful so far. We've had a lot of support, local support and interest, and with a good turnout tonight, I anticipate that it will continue down that road. And so just spread the word. And I would also like to mention tonight that for our September speaker, she's actually present with us tonight, and that's going to be Peggy Scott. And we all know, most of us know Peggy, I think. So we look forward to hearing from her. That will be September the 18th. It will also be in the evening. It will begin at 5 o'clock. And then in October, we're going to go back to our fall schedule, and we'll have a morning event, a late morning, more like a brunch type of situation. So it just, and kind of picking up on what you said, it means a lot to me to see the faces of people here that I haven't seen for a while, and others that I do see often, because my family has a lot of roots here. I mean, like 4th, 5th generation type roots. So I'm just glad to be a part of something larger than myself, and that I get to, participate in the Legends program. So on behalf of the Historical Society, I thank everyone for being here tonight.